The light had already gone out of the sky by the time Edmund Carver stepped off the curb. He didn't notice the color draining from the evening. He never did anymore. His eyes had stopped being useful to him 3 years ago. A slow dimming, his doctor had said, like a lamp whose filament was giving up thread by thread. He had learned to navigate by sound, by feel, by the particular way air moved differently near a wall than near open space. He knew this intersection. He had walked it 400 times. The number of steps from the corner to the median, the time it took for the walk signal to expire, the way the pavement dipped slightly at the eastern edge, where the city had done a poor repair job and never come back to fix it. He knew it. That was the problem with knowing something too well. You stopped paying attention. The sound came first, not a horn, not a screech, just a voice, small, maybe 8, rough at the edges like a voice that had been used too much in open air. "Mister, hey, mister, stop!" Edmund stopped. He didn't know why. He was not a man who stopped for things. He was a man who moved forward with the kind of conviction that had built 3 companies from nothing and argued cases before federal judges without his hands shaking. But something in the voice, the flatness of it, the absence of performance, made his cane go still against the pavement. He heard it a half-second later, the bus, low gear, grinding forward through the yellow, the driver not seeing him or seeing him and calculating wrong. The rush of displaced air hit Edmund's face the way it only does when something large passes very close. The hand was already on his sleeve, small fingers, strong grip, pulling sideways, not asking, not suggesting, just moving him 3 steps to the right with a certainty that left no room for argument. The bus exhaled past where Edmund had been standing and kept going. For a moment, neither of them moved. "You didn't hear it," the voice said. Not a question. "No," Edmund said, "I didn't hear it." Silence. The city filled it back in. Another engine somewhere, a woman laughing 2 blocks away, the hiss of a delivery cart on the sidewalk behind them. "You're blind," the voice said. "Yes." "How long?" Edmund turned slightly toward the voice. He had the habit now of orienting his face in the direction of sound, even when he couldn't see it. People found it unnerving. He found it polite. 3 years, he said. "Roughly. Does it hurt?" Not anymore. He could feel the presence of the child, the weight of attention, the specific quality of stillness that belongs to someone deciding something. Then the hand released his sleeve. "Okay," the voice said. "Watch yourself." Edmund almost smiled at that. He hadn't smiled at something in a long time. "I'll try," he said. He heard the small feet start to move away. "Wait," he said. The feet stopped. Edmund stood there with his cane and the memory of air from a bus that had nearly taken him out of the world, and he tried to think of what to say. He was not good at this. He had never been good at this. His wife, Clara, had told him that for 22 years, and he had never adequately argued the point, which was unusual for him. "What's your name?" he asked. A pause. The kind of pause that means the question is being evaluated for risk. "Kit," the voice said finally. "Kit what?" "Just Kit." "All right," Edmund said. "Just Kit. Where are you going?" "Nowhere special." He processed that. He was a man who had made a career out of reading what people weren't saying, and what Just Kit was not saying was substantial. "Are you hungry?" Longer pause this time. "Why?" "Because it's 7 in the evening, and you're 8 years old, and you're standing on a street corner alone, and I am going to a diner 1 block from here where I eat dinner by myself 3 times a week, and you just kept me alive. So I'm asking if you're hungry." The feet did not move away. Edmund walked to the diner, and Kit walked beside him without being asked. The place was called Elwood's, which was not the owner's name. The owner was a woman named Patrice who had bought the diner from a man named Elwood 15 years ago, and kept the sign because she didn't want to repaint the awning. Edmund knew this because Patrice had told him, and Patrice told everyone things, freely and without provocation, which Edmund had once found irritating and now found steadying. "Mr. Carver," Patrice said as they came in, and then she paused in the way people paused when something altered the expected picture. "And a friend. This is Kit," Edmund said. "Kit saved my life tonight. We'd like the corner booth." They went to the corner booth. Edmund settled himself the way he had learned to, cane to the left-right hand, trailing the edge of the tables, sliding in until the edge of the table met his coat. He knew exactly where everything would be once. Patrice set it down. She always set it down the same way. Edmund heard Kit slide into the seat across from him and then go very still in the way that people went still when they were trying to take in a room without being seen doing it. "You can look," Edmund said. "I wasn't. You were. It's fine. What does it look like?" A pause then, carefully. "Old, but not dirty old. Like someone keeps it but stopped adding new things a long time ago." Edmund considered that. "That's accurate," he said. "What else?" "There's a woman in the back who keeps looking at us." "That's Patrice. She runs the place. Is she going to ask me something?" "Probably. What should I say?" "The truth is usually serviceable," Edmund said. Kit was quiet for a moment. "What if the truth is complicated?" Edmund placed his hands flat on the table. He had large hands, a lawyer's hands, Clara used to say, hands built for textile paper and pressing points. Complicated how? He asked. Like. A pause. Like I don't have an address to give her if she asks. The sentence was delivered carefully, stripped of emotion, the way you said something you'd rehearsed, saying without feeling. Because feeling it made it harder to function. Edmund recognized the technique. He had used it himself in the first months after Clara died, when people asked how he was, and he had learned to say fine in exactly the tone that made them stop asking. She won't ask for your address, Edmund said. She'll ask what you want to eat. Kit didn't say anything. The macaroni and cheese is real, Edmund offered. Not from a box, and the biscuits come out at 7:15 on Tuesdays. Today is Tuesday. He heard the small hands flatten on the table across from him, mirroring his gesture without knowing it, maybe, or maybe knowing it exactly. Okay, Kit said. Patrice came with water. She set down 2 glasses without ceremony and then said, in the careful voice of someone choosing not to ask what they were thinking, "What can I get you both?" Edmund ordered the roast chicken he always ordered. Kit ordered the macaroni and cheese, and then, after a brief and nearly inaudible negotiation with some internal authority, the biscuits. When Patrice left, the silence settled differently. Less provisional. Do you have somewhere to sleep tonight? Edmund asked. Yes, a beat. Sort of. There's a place. It's fine. Edmund said nothing. He had learned in 63 years and 30 of practicing law that silence was often the best instrument for extracting what someone was unwilling to say outright. Kit held out longer than most witnesses. Edmund respected that. It's a building, Kit said at last, on Arden. The heat's been off since February, but the upper floor stays warm enough if you stay in the middle and you've got a blanket. Edmund sat with that for a moment. February. It was now late October. How long have you been in that building? Since June. And before June, Kit didn't answer. Edmund didn't push. Some things you learned on your own schedule, and some things you never learned, and the world moved forward either way. The food came. For a while, there was only eating. Edmund found that he was more aware than usual of what the sounds across the table told him. The way Kit ate, not fast the way he'd expected, not the uncontrolled urgency of pure hunger, but measured, careful. Someone who had learned not to show how hungry they were because showing it had cost them something before. That detail lodged somewhere in Edmund's chest and stayed there. You're not going to ask me where my parents are, Kit said. It was an observation, not a question. Not yet, Edmund said. Most adults ask right away. I know, he broke a biscuit. It's usually the wrong first question. What's the right first question? Edmund thought about that. Whether you're safe, he said, which I've been trying to figure out without asking. Kit picked up a fork and set it down again. I'm safe enough. That's a different thing from safe. I know. They ate. Edmund finished the chicken and half the biscuit and most of the water. He listened to the diner around them, Patrice refilling coffee at the table by the window, the cook's radio playing something he couldn't identify. The particular creak of the 3rd floorboard near the register, which he knew because he'd been hearing it for 11 years. My mother died in May, Kit said. Edmund did not react with his face. He had learned that the reactions people showed instinctively to bad news often made the person reporting it feel like they had to manage the reactor's feelings, which was an unfair reversal of responsibility. I'm sorry, he said simply. I don't have a father. I mean, I have one somewhere, but not in the way that counts. Kit's voice was flat as pavement. There was an aunt in Portland. She said she'd take me, then she didn't. So you've been in the building on Arden since June, Edmund said. Yeah, how old are you? 9. Almost. Edmund's hands were still on the table. He thought about Clara, who had wanted children, and whom the world had not cooperated with on that front, and he thought about the building on Arden, which he had actually driven past once, or been driven past, before the driving became someone else's responsibility. He thought about the particular arithmetic of a loan that Kit had been doing since May. The budget of warmth and food and invisibility, required to stay safe in a city that was not designed to notice you. He was 63 years old. He had built a firm, lost a wife, lost his sight, and sold the firm because running it blind was something he could have managed physically, but had chosen not to manage emotionally. He lived in an apartment on the 14th floor with a woman named Mrs. Yoon, who came 3 mornings a week to help with things, and a driver named Bertrand who took him where he needed to go, and nothing else in particular. Kit, he said. Yeah, I have a guest room. Silence. It has a bed and a working radiator and a lock on the door that works from the inside. More silence. I'm not asking you to trust me, Edmund said. I'm telling you the room exists. What you do with that information is your decision. He could hear Kit thinking. It had a texture, that kind of thinking, The weighing of bad options against less familiar ones, the way the mind moved when it had learned the hard way that kindness was sometimes a door that opened onto something worse. Why? Kit asked. Edmund considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Because you put your hand on my sleeve and pulled me out of the path of a bus, he said, and I am not a man who forgets debts. And because, he paused, because the building on Arden is no place to be when November comes. Kit didn't answer immediately. I could call Bertrand, Edmund said. He drives me. You could meet him first, outside, and decide. And if I don't like it, then you walk away and I never follow up and we never see each other again. You're serious. I'm a lawyer, Edmund said. I don't say things I'm not prepared to back up. A small sound that might have been, briefly, the beginning of something like a laugh. Okay, Kit said. Bertrand was a large man who communicated primarily through the quality of his silences, and his silence when he pulled up to find Edmund standing on the sidewalk outside. Elwood's with a small child in a coat that was too big and shoes that didn't match was a silence of significant complexity. He said nothing. He drove them to the building on Arden first, because Edmund asked him to, so Kit could get the backpack. Edmund waited in the car while Kit went up. He listened to the street, a distant argument. Someone's television, the sound of pigeons, the long exhale of the city being itself. Kit came back in 4 minutes. Edmund heard the car door and the backpack being set between the feet, the particular thud of something not very heavy but very full of specific chosen objects. Is that everything? Edmund asked. Yeah, Kit said. Bertrand drove them uptown without being told. He'd worked for Edmund for 9 years and had recalibrated on stranger pivots than this. The apartment was the 14th floor of a building that smelled like old money and good maintenance. Edmund knew it by the particular quality of the elevator's silence, which was the silence of excellent engineering. He led Kit down the hall by the count he always kept. 17 steps, left turn, 12 more steps, the door. Inside, Edmund turned on the lights out of habit and then remembered, as he often did, that the lights were for other people now. He heard Kit step in and stop. What does it look like? Edmund asked. A long pause. Big, Kit said. Really big, but not cold big. There's a lot of books. I can't read them anymore, Edmund said, but I can't make myself get rid of them. Do you remember them? He thought about that. Most of them, he said. Well enough. He walked Kit to the guest room. It had a window that looked east, Clara's old reading chair that Edmund couldn't bring himself to move, a lamp, a bed with a blue blanket that Mrs. Yoon replaced every autumn. Edmund stood in the doorway. The bathroom is the next door left, he said. Towels in the cabinet under the sink. There's food in the kitchen. Mrs. Yoon comes Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. The refrigerator is usually stocked. You don't need to ask. He heard Kit standing in the middle of the room in the way people stood when they were trying to figure out whether something was real. The lock, Kit said. Edmund had expected this. The button on the inside knob, he said. You push it down. It unlocks from the inside but not the outside. I'll get a key made tomorrow so you have both. Quiet. Okay, Kit said. And then, thank you, Edmund, he said. Just Edmund. He went to his room. He did not sleep for a while. He lay in the dark that was his permanent condition now and listened to the apartment, the radiator ticking. The city, 14 floors below, the particular new addition to the silence that was the sound of a door clicking closed on the other side of the hallway, and then, after a while, staying closed. In the weeks that followed, Edmund learned Kit in the way he had learned most things in the last 3 years, through sound and inference and the evidence of small decisions. He learned that Kit woke early, always before 7, and made no noise coming out of the room, which meant practice. He learned that Kit ate everything but left the coffee alone, taking instead the orange juice that Edmund had never bought before, and now kept in the refrigerator's front shelf by habit. He learned that Kit sat at the kitchen table and read. He could hear the pages, hear the particular quality of attention that reading produced, and that the books Kit pulled from the shelves were not the obvious ones, not the children's books his firm's had occasionally left behind. The novels, the histories. Once, Edmund came into the kitchen and Kit said, without preamble, why did this lawyer defend someone he knew was guilty? Edmund pulled out a chair and sat down. Which book? Kit told him. He spent 45 minutes explaining the adversarial system, the presumption of innocence, the difference between what a person knows privately and what can be proven publicly. Kit listened without interrupting, which was, in Edmund's experience, the rarest form of attention. That's not satisfying, Kit said when he finished. No, Edmund said. Law rarely is, but you did it for 30 years. I did it for 30 years. Why? Edmund thought about it. Because the alternative, a system where we only defend the people we're certain deserve defending, is more frightening than the one we have, he said. A lot of law is choosing the least bad option and being rigorous about it. Kit was quiet for a moment. My mom was a paralegal, Kit said. Then, almost immediately, as if embarrassed by the offer of the information, before she got sick. Edmund said nothing. He waited. She used to say the lawyers always knew things the clients didn't know they'd told them, Kit said. Like they could hear the part of the sentence that wasn't said. She wasn't wrong. The orange juice was set down on the table. Edmund heard it. She would have liked you, Kit said. I think. She liked people who were honest about complicated things. Edmund did not know what to do with that sentence. He sat with it for a while. What was her name, he asked. Vera, Kit said. He turned it over in his mind. Vera. Someone who had been a paralegal and gotten sick and left behind a 9-year-old on a planet that did not have enough places for 9-year-olds who'd been left behind. Kit, he said. Yeah, I need to make some calls. About school, about documentation, about what the legal process looks like for making something more permanent than a guest room. He kept his voice even. I'm not asking you to decide anything. I'm telling you what I'm thinking about. The kitchen was quiet for a long time. You'd have to deal with a lot of people, Kit said. Social services. Courts, probably. People who'll think it's weird. I've dealt with courts, Edmund said dryly. People will think you're doing it for a weird reason. People think a lot of things. I've spent my career not being particularly governed by that. Another pause. I'm not easy, Kit said. Neither am I. I have bad weeks, where I don't want to talk to anyone, where a stop. I just need to be left alone for a while. Noted, Edmund said. I have those weeks too. We can be difficult in the same apartment. He heard something shift. Chair legs. Kit standing. Okay, Kit said. It was the same word Kit had used the first night outside the diner. Edmund was beginning to understand that it carried different weights depending on what came before it, and this particular okay had the weight of something that had taken a long time to be ready to be said. Good, Edmund said. I'll call my attorney tomorrow. He paused. The irony of needing an attorney is not lost on me. This time it was not the beginning of a laugh. It was an actual one. Brief, not performed, genuine. Edmund picked up his coffee mug and listened to it. The legal process was, as anticipated, extensive. There were interviews and home visits and background checks and forms that ran to dozens of pages that Edmund had his former associate Marion Spear review before he signed them, because Edmund Carver had not survived 63 years and 3 decades of contract law by signing things he hadn't had reviewed. There was a caseworker named Mr. Dent who came twice and asked Kit careful questions and reported that Kit was, in his assessment, adjusting remarkably well, which was the language social services used when a child had learned to present as functional, regardless of what was happening internally. Edmund knew this because he had years ago represented enough child custody cases to understand the vocabulary. He discussed this with Kit afterward, quietly, not as a criticism of Mr. Dent, but as a translation. He thinks you're doing well, Edmund said. He's also not entirely sure what doing well looks like for you specifically, so he's using a general template. Kit considered this. What template would you use? I'd ask you, Edmund said. Kit was quiet. So I'm asking, Edmund said. A long pause. They were in the living room. Edmund was in his usual chair, which he had positioned after 3 years of trial and error at the precise angle that let him face the window and know where the window was without seeing it. Some days are fine, Kit said. Some days I wake up and forget where I am for a second, and then I remember, and it takes a while for the room to feel right, for this to feel like mine. A pause. Not because anything is wrong, just because I'm still waiting for it to stop. Stop. Being real, Kit said. Edmund turned his face toward the window. Outside, 14 floors down, the city was being its unceasing self. I understand that, he said. Better than you might expect. Kit didn't ask him to explain. Maybe Kit already knew. Maybe the not asking was a form of extending the same space Edmund had been careful to extend. I'm going to take you to meet someone on Saturday, Edmund said. A friend of mine. She runs a literacy foundation, and she knew Clara, my wife. She's been asking about you. You told people? A few. The ones who needed to know. What did they say? They said various things, Edmund said. The ones who know me well said it made sense. The ones who know me professionally were surprised. My former partner Henry said, and I'm quoting Edmund, I didn't know you had it in you, which I found both insulting and fair. The laugh came easier now. It still surprised Edmund each time, not because he'd forgotten it was possible, but because each instance felt like evidence of something. Months moved forward the way months did, indifferent to the people inside them. Kit started at a school 12 blocks north, a small charter school that a colleague had recommended, and came home every afternoon at the same time and spent 40 minutes in the kitchen before saying anything to anyone. Edmund had learned not to fill this silence. It was a decompression time, the silent dissolving of a day's worth of being in the presence of other people. Edmund recognized it because he did the same thing after long meetings, had done it for 30 years without understanding why it was necessary. Kit made one friend at school, a girl named Anna, who came over twice and examined the apartment with the thoroughness of a building inspector, and then announced to Kit, loudly enough that Edmund could hear from his study, that Edmund was probably fine, and this place was actually nice. Edmund filed this assessment away as satisfactory. The backpack did not move from the corner of Kit's room for a long time. Edmund noticed its presence by the sound of it, the particular noise when Kit moved past it, the brush of nylon against the baseboard, the soft weight of it shifting. He did not ask about it. One evening in February, Kit appeared in the doorway of his study. Edmund knew it was Kit because Kit walked with the right heel landing slightly harder than the left, a habit of 8 years that would take years more to undo. "The backpack," Kit said. Edmund turned from the desk. He hadn't been working. He'd been listening to a recorded decision from the Seventh Circuit that a former colleague had sent him out of habit more than purpose. "Yeah," he said. I want to put it in the closet," Kit said, "but I'm not sure if that means it's gone or just different." Edmund thought about that carefully. "I think that depends on whether you ever need to take it down again," he said. "What if I don't? Then eventually it's just something in a closet," Edmund said. "Like everything else we keep that we don't need to use anymore but can't make ourselves throw away." A pause. "Do you have things like that?" Kit asked. Edmund was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said. "A coat of Clara's. 3 pairs of reading glasses I can't use anymore. A brief I wrote in 1997 that I won." He paused. "Some things you keep because needing them again isn't the point." Kit stood in the doorway. "Okay," Kit said. A few minutes later, Edmund heard the closet door, the particular soft compression of it, closing against the frame. Then Kit's footsteps crossing the room. Then the small, unremarkable sound of the backpack being set down in a new place. He did not call attention to it. He went back to the Seventh Circuit decision and the particular voice of the judge reading his own opinion in a cadence that suggested he still believed language mattered. Outside the window, it was February, and it was cold, and the city was covering the distance between then and spring the way it always had. One day at a time, without sentiment, without announcement, just the slow accumulation of forward. In the room down the hall, something was changing its address. Edmund could not see it. He didn't need to. He sat in his chair and listened to the apartment breathing around him, and for the first time in a long time, there was more in the silence than absence.